look at your life and know where you feel stuck, you're hitting resistance, and where you're struggling. And then also look at your life and know what do you want. And those are the two ways that I get to help people with their subconscious, but you on your own. Look at those two things because a lot of people, they don't even know what they want. If you don't know what you want, it's going to be really hard to make choices that support that.
Electricast. Welcome to Season 4 of Transforming 45. I'm your host, Lisa Boate, and this season we're stepping fully into our power. The heat, the hormones, the heartbreak, the healing. This is Midlife, raw and redefined. Each episode, you'll hear stories of humans who are rewriting the rules, reclaiming their bodies, their desires, their voices. This is where we stop shrinking, start shining, and remember who the hell we are. Because midlife isn't a crisis, it's an awakening. Let's get transforming 45. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. This week, I am really excited to welcome Krishna Avalon. She is a healer, guide, and lifelong student of what it means to live in deep relationship with ourselves and others. She's a licensed acupuncturist, psych, K master facilitator, certified internal family systems practitioner, Reiki master, teacher, and breathwork guide. Someone who walks her talk with authenticity and heart. A Leo sun with a Cancer rising, a Capricorn moon. Krishna embodies both fire and tenderness, fierce in truth, grounded in love, and endlessly curious about the human spirit. When she's not supporting clients in transformation, you'll find her with her daughter and their dog roaming through nature in their camper van, chasing beauty, connection, and Frida. Krishna, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here today.
That was such a sweet introduction. And I just feel so seen that you took the time to read through information about me that I don't normally just, share. You found that on your own. So thank you.
We try to make people feel seen and welcome here, so I'm glad that happened for you this morning. Krishna, tell us, who are you and how did life introduce you to this version?
Be as concise as possible, but I am here to know the brilliance of who I am, to love and to be loved. I feel like as humans, we're all here to connect. And if I don't feel connected and inspired, to be honest, that's when I can go into a little bit of existential crisis. I do feel like that is healthy to do every now and again. I feel like if we understand our own suffering, we can understand the suffering of others and be with them in theirs. And what I get to teach really to other people all day, every day is to be able to feel the bigness of this life, but to also to return to your own energy, stay present and connected in that so that you don't get lost and overwhelmed in an overwhelming world. To answer your question, how did I come into this version of me? I mean, I'm 51 now. I have a curiosity and desire to learn and continue to evolve and grow. It's like a compass for me. I continue to train, I continue to get degrees. I came into this world with spiritual lessons, mostly of a lot of people, similar ones, like needing to learn how to trust who I am, learn how to say no without guilt, not always say yes to earn love and acceptance and approval from others. I had to navigate a lot of confusion. So I had to learn like clarity and healthy boundaries. And so I think with all those things, and then starting my path in healing as a doctor of Oyo medicine, acupuncture being my first love in this life, really having such a beautiful career in that for so long, and then finding the work that I get to do now that lights me up the most with the subconscious and helping people and myself transform limiting beliefs and self-sabotaging behaviors is really like the stuff that helps people move on and create their lives the way they want them to be in the quickest and most direct way. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's a big question. And when we get to midlife, there are so many threads, right? Like this conversation is just going to follow one small thread in the tapestry of everything that you have lived and brought together to this point in time. And that's the reality of our day today, right? Like we have all of this vast amount of experience and knowledge and evolution behind us. And each day we just sort of follow one thread. And one of the things that you said that really struck a chord with me was about being present in challenging times. And we know that in life in general and in midlife, there tend to be some significant changes that can make it challenging to be present, to be aware of what is happening with us when often there's so many factors happening in our lives, kids stuff, family stuff, parent stuff, potentially work stuff. And then we have the global context around us. So what are some of the things you do to help people connect with that presence and be with themselves?
Yeah. And that's a really important question because I get to do that a lot with the work that I do with the subconscious. We get to peacefully unattach from stressful and triggering things. So, for instance, if your stress was that you're around your family and they had different political beliefs than you or different religious beliefs, or they didn't approve of your choices, you could sit there and we'd focus on that stress, or you would help your subconscious mind peacefully unattach and go in a new direction to have a new experience. And then we could also talk about what you want to experience and create a new subconscious program. For instance, we'd talk about, like, Lisa, what do you want? And you might say, I have clear boundaries without guilt. I allow people to misunderstand me. My needs matter. Stuff like that is pretty foundational stuff that I get to work with people. And when you create new subconscious programs, because the subconscious mind creates 97% of our lives, it makes that experience possible and so much easier. So you might have told yourself a million times with your conscious mind, like, my needs matter, my voice matters. But if you're in the company of your family who maybe has not accepted your choices or not honored your boundaries, it can be incredibly challenging and you can lose yourself. Or maybe you can't even be around your family. And that's not really the experience that a lot of people want to have. But a lot of people, because they don't have boundaries and don't know how to connect to themselves and stay with themselves in an overwhelming, chaotic world, sometimes they're just triggered and then their boundary is like, and they cut off, which is also fine and a survival strategy. And it's important to know, right? Like what your no and your yes is. But can you be who you are in the presence of others? Like, no matter what, that's really the highest, most optimal experience, right?
Yeah. And I want to focus on this if selfishly. And we'll come back to that in a minute. And I just want to make sure that everyone who's listening is with us on the vocabulary. So can you break down a little bit what is the difference between subconscious mind and conscious mind, and how do those two things interact?
Yeah, thank you. Because even in your introduction about me, which I know is a mouthful, a lot of people don't know the things that I do because I'm literally waiting for the world to catch up. But the subconscious mind is the visual that's used a lot is like the iceberg. So if you imagine an iceberg and you see the top of it, that's the little bit sticking out. That's the conscious mind. Super important, but it honestly only creates about 3 to 5% of our lives. Everything underneath, that depth, the darkness, the girth, the heaviness, that's our programs, our beliefs, and our behaviors. And that's like 95 to 97% of where we create our lives from. And that's what the neuroscience says. And so when you're able to work with your subconscious, it just makes the heavy lifting, the excavating, whatever work you're doing in the subconscious, it makes it so much easier. So both parts of the mind are very, very important. But if you're trying to make change in your life, or you're trying to unattach from stressful or triggering things, past, present, or maybe even fear of the future, working with your subconscious is so much easier. Like, I just want to offer to anyone that's listening that healing and creating what you want does not have to be this hard, arduous, enduring process. You don't have to put in the time to earn your happiness just because you're already 45 and have suffered for the. No. What I have learned and the programming I get to create for myself and others is like, you are worthy and deserving of it being easy, of you having support, grace, stability, safety. Like right now, just as your inherent birthright being in this world. So that's the subconscious mind. It's our habits, our beliefs, and our behaviors creates 95 to 97% of your life.
I kind of visualize it like the map, right? It's the map that underlies everything else, or it's like the motherboard that does everything that we don't consciously think about, which includes things like breathing and digestion and all of the things that our miraculous body just does. Part of that is wrapped up in that as well. And I think it's also interesting to think about, and it helps us understand other people because there's different sensory ways that we build that map or we build that underlying programming. Some of us are very visual in taking messages that way. Some of us are very auditory in taking messages that way. I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit because I find it really helpful to get to the bottom sometimes of misunderstandings because we take in information in different ways. And once we take it in, it's in us, and so it inherently changes because of the way we interact with the world.
Yes, I love your question because for one, I've talked quite a bit about the subconscious and been on many podcasts, thankfully, and I haven't heard it framed this way. And I love that you see it as like a map and the motherboard because while I don't love comparing us to technology, one of my teachers, right, Bruce Lipton, who I love, who wrote the biology, believes he compares us to, right, like the subconscious is the hard drive. That's your programs. We need it to function and to operate. Conscious mind is the keyboard. So I like your map and motherboard, and I'm going to use
Yeah.
that now. It's so much more beautiful. And yeah, so I have a lot of lenses, and I love your asking of receiving information because our nervous systems even receive sight, sound, touch, intuition, smell. And you're exactly right. The subconscious prefers that type of data and information over words. So, like, if you wanted to support your subconscious in feeling the experiences you want to feel or have or create, you could just make like a vision board for your laptop or your phone from Canva or your favorite pictures, not have any words, making a vision board with no words, just having the images that you want to feel or the colors or yeah, working with your subconscious in that way is actually more effective than using words. So I love that you're saying that.
I found once I understood that, it actually helped me in my communication with my husband because we have very different ways of bringing information into our bodies from the world. So I am almost exclusively auditory. I am an I'm a podcast host, so clearly, like, I take in information by the way I hear it. And my partner is almost exclusively visual. And for a long time, I struggled with understanding how that difference was playing out in the way that we communicate with each other. And then once I had that understanding of like, oh, he literally is having a totally different experience in this world than I am because of the way he brings information in, it allowed me to communicate with him in a more empathetic way and in a way that worked for both of us.
That's beautiful that you understand that. And if you are an auditory person, anyone else who receives information, like my strongest sense is actually smell, but sound is probably next and then visual. Listening to binaural beats, if you find, playlists that help reset your brain waves just on low tone in the background is incredible for calming your nervous system, bringing your mind into a theta state, actually, so that you can create change in your subconscious mind is so much more effective. And you can do that most effectively in the morning before you get out of bed and before you go to sleep. So when you're already sort of sleepy, maybe your mind is not as busy, and then you play some binaural beats or some solfeggio frequencies and help your brain get into that theta state where it's just kind of like spongy and open. And then maybe look at some visuals or imagine in your mind what you want to feel and be super effective as a meditation for your subconscious mind.
Those are really great suggestions that can be really transformative. And one of the other things I think about in this world that we're currently living in is that with all of the tumultuousness, it's almost like everyone's subconscious mind is on display. And if we understand it in that way, it's understanding that people are responding to what's happening in the world based on this map. right? Based on the subconscious map that they have. And while it's challenging, there also is opportunity in this time. I think to really understand that and to gain some empathy for how everyone is experiencing this in different ways and really hone some tools to talk to people who have had very different experiences so that we can actually come together. And I'm wondering how you see that playing out.
Like that, even with a little bit different language, but same meaning really, is I understand now that people are mostly behaving from their trauma and their wounds, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And I believe that we all have special needs. And when you work with your own system, growing your own capacity to be with yourself, tending your own wounds, it helps you have compassion for people, knowing that that is the truth of what I see, that we often are behaving from our wounds and our trauma that we're stuck in kind of over and over again. Because what we believe is what we're going to keep creating over and over again. And I really do believe that we all have special needs. All of our needs matter. And it does help me have more compassion, knowing that this person has this wound or that wound, or their spirit or their soul is trying to learn that lesson. And just allow people their own experience. One of the other things I get to teach so many of us that are highly sensitive and empathic is that we don't have to fix other people's problems or their experience. We can stay with our own selves and what we need, which is actually healthier for everyone, and just allow people their own experience. And if we need to walk away because somebody doesn't realize they're projecting or dumping their stuff all over the place, then we walk away. But it's not ours to fix or manipulate and control. But a lot of us have learned to do that to gauge our safety, our own safety, because of what we grew up in, with our parents or our teachers or our family members or friends. We learned to gauge our own safety based on what other people were doing or needing. And what we forgot or never learned is how to focus instead on, like, what do I need right now? And that's why a lot of people are anxious and overwhelmed. They are not focusing on what they need in this very moment. They're focusing on what's wrong and what does somebody else need? What needs fixing? What needs a solution? That's hypervigilance. And so that's what I get to teach, whether it's subconscious reprogramming or somatic meditation to help your nervous system grow its capacity and learn how to regulate and feel safe in the moment or in your body.
That I think is the key of the work that we need to do at all times, and particularly in midlife, because we are in this space where we are quite often in service to so many others. And what you said that really stuck with me was when we abandon ourselves and our own needs, it's not actually good for anyone. But we have women in particular in this culture have been deeply programmed that that is what it means to be a good person, is to abandon ourselves and our own needs. And we are only good when we do that. And we give ourselves over to supporting everybody else. And at the beginning of our conversation, when I said, like, selfishly, I want to come back to this, I recently have come to the realization that I am hyper aware of everybody in a space. And I feel like it's my job to make sure that that space feels safe and calm for everyone. And I'm recognizing that that is actually my own desire, right? It is me trying to keep myself safe in the guise of making sure everybody else is safe. And so, what are some of the strategies you use to help people peel back those layers and get to that, like, that initial wound, to understand where that's coming from and what you can do to shift it? Because you're right, it's a lack of trust, right? It's a lack of trust that anybody else can take care of themselves and I have to do it myself. So how do we get into a place where we can actually trust?
I think it's so beautiful that you have that level of self awareness, first of all. And I think that it's so helpful to you and your relationships that you know that you want to, work with that and even be better for yourself and in your relationships. I think that's so beautiful. because a lot of people haven't even known that that's what they're doing. And if I could just reference like how we had to come onto this call, I was a couple minutes late. I forgot that Riverside, your software requires Google Chrome, which I don't normally use. So it was taking me a minute and I could have been flustered more and I could have shit talked myself for being late or not together. But what I did in that moment, even when you're like, do you need to reschedule? I just held myself and I was like, I'm late, right? Because I've done the work of love and acceptance of myself exactly as I am. Nobody wants to be late. I'm not a late person, but that's just what happened. If I hadn't had that, I might have matched your energy and been like, oh my God, how do I need to fix this situation? I just brought the awareness to my own, like, what do I need right now? And it changes everything. So what I get to teach to answer your question again is like whether it's visual, whether it's a mantra, whether it's telling yourself something, is to just come back into your energy, maybe use your breath, and be like, what do I need right now? And some people don't even know yet. They're so not used to asking themselves that question. They've never asked themselves that. No one's ever else asked that. Sometimes I ask people that and they're in shock. And literally, I just worked with someone yesterday and she's a teenager and she just didn't know. And I was like, that's fine. Let's try instead. How do you want to feel? That she understood. She knew she wanted to feel calm. She knew she wanted to feel confident. And so we worked with that. Okay. When's the last time you felt that way? Can you imagine what that would feel like? What would you be doing? That she could understand. And so we worked with that.
Yeah. So those small moments of just giving ourselves time to reflect on what is it that I actually need. And when you were talking about working with a teenager, it made me think when we are in this hyper activated space and the narrative around parenting right now, is that we have to make everything perfect for our children, which is really damaging. Again, it's us feeling that need for perfection and control. And then we don't ever model for them what it is to ask those questions of what do I need in this moment? Do I need to just take a break for a second? Do I need to breathe? When we are constantly weaving this perfect world where everything always looks perfect and everybody is fine all the time, it doesn't give us this opportunity to model what it is to actually ask those questions. And how do you support women who are in that, or humans in general, who are in that stage of, perhaps they've been parenting for a while and now they're finding that having conversation with their teens or their young adults is really challenging because of this factor, right? They've never seen you as a human being. They've only ever seen you as this uh like master, like pulling the puppet strings is a little extreme. It's I my own perimenopausal brain won't let me get to the vocabulary I need right now.
Oh, I'm sensing it and I understand. And this is such a beautiful question because I do have a teenage daughter who will be 17 next month. And my parenting has changed with her. One, because I've done Psych K. That's the process that I use for the subconscious mind for my own triggers. I used to put my worry onto her. Is that helpful? No, it is not. And it drives her bananas. So instead, I've learned to allow her her own experience, try to create a safe space for whatever it is that she's going through. Last night, she was in a fight with her best friend. She was super struggling. She started her periods. She's always grumpy with that. And so, yes, she was in her room all night with the door closed. I used to beat myself up because we're not, it's just she and I and our dog and our guinea pig. And I used to sort of beat myself up that I couldn't be the mom that like did everything, like paid for all the things, made all the things happen, sit down for dinner every night. I mean, that's just not a reality. So I made her dinner. She crawled in bed with me for like 15 minutes and ate it. And I was so grateful for that 15 minutes. And then she went right back in her room, right? This morning, she's being grumpy with me as I'm like trying to get her day ready before I meet with you. And still, I'm like, she let me give her a hug, which she doesn't always do, right? She's not a touchy person. And like that's enough. And I looked her in the eye and she felt it. And like that's enough, right? And so to answer your question, perimenopausal women, menopausal women, parenting teenagers, the difficulty as they're getting older, they need us less. We worry about them. What are they doing? We don't really know. I mean, just like you said, with any human, it's like being present in your own energy helps other people feel safe. It really does. If you are holding your own energy and grounded and you see people, that helps them feel safe, whether they know it or not. It's why people have come back to me in my practice, even after I haven't seen them in 10 years, because they remember like they're going to feel seen and heard and they'll feel safe because I work with my own system. And yes, everybody who shows up here starts crying like immediately. I go through like a box of Kleenex a day because it's just staying in your own energy and allowing people their own experience. And that's not always so easy to do because we didn't learn that, especially as women. We really were taught to give and give and give to receive love and acceptance and be a good girl, just like you said, especially if we were raised in a religious family like I was, like learn to be a martyr. Don't say no, always say yes to things you don't even want to do. And if you say no, you're selfish. Had to outgrow that one. And they're the things that I teach to other people all day, every day. And it's the things people come back to me for support for.
Yeah. And I think it's such an important conversation, and we don't have it enough around what parenting looks like in this stage, because there is, there's lots of support for young moms, and that is essential. Like, there's no part of me who is saying that that's not important. It really is. And there is just as much transition that is happening in that parenting relationship now as there was at the beginning, but we don't talk about it as much. We don't have the same kind of support networks set up. And like I said earlier, when we haven't given each other the space to really see each other as our own individual human beings, because we're so enmeshed in this dependence of parent and child, it's that pulling apart that can feel really painful, or like, oh, I'm failing in this moment.
Mhm.
And although like those emotions are real, I think about when I was dropping. So my two sons are in their second year of university. My oldest is 20, my youngest is almost 19. And we were dropping them off at the house they were living in this year. So they had both articulated like, wow, this feels really different than just going to school and going into residence, because it's just kind of like being away from home, like going to camp for a little bit. But actually living in your own home is a different animal.
Yeah.
And so he was talking about the things that other parents had done. And I immediately felt this like, oh my gosh, have I done enough? And compared to what all the other parents have done. And I was like, do you need this? Do you need this? Can we go get you this? And my oldest son looked at me and he was like, Mom, you have done enough. And in that, like, I just let it sit in my body for a while, because he wasn't just saying, you've done enough today, we're ready for this living experience. It was, Mom, you've done your job. And while we will always have a parent-child relationship, he's like, you've done enough. I am ready for this world and for your role in it to shift and change. And that is both a beautiful thing and a painful thing. How do you help people hold space for both of those things?
Yeah, yeah, I love this question so much because I had to work with this one. And just maybe a year and a half ago, our routine, my daughter and I, she would play piano in her room at night, always with her door closed, of course. And then I'd be in my room, which is just across the hallway, and I'd be doing yoga. And it is just such a beautiful experience to like end our day that way, even though she's in her room and I'm in mine, knowing that we're separate, but we're together, having our own experiences and doing what we both want to do. Right. And I would get so sad about soon enough that wouldn't be happening. And I've done Psych K now for that trigger, for that sadness, which really it's the abandonment wound, right? For me. For me, it's like being alone and not having someone need me, right? Who am I if no one needs me? Here I am, a practitioner now of 24 years and a mom. And I started perceiving, because psyche, help us create new perceptions that are not currently available. I started remembering who I am and all of my interests when I'm not continually giving to someone else. And I started to feel the freedom and the excitement and the opportunity. Um, that will come when that happens. And it's such a beautiful thing to find the gratitude for that kind of longing and loss because you know you've loved that much. And that's where the subconscious can be so amazingly helpful. And then to speak to something you were saying earlier with the perimenopausal brain, which, oh my gosh, it's so difficult. And if you are not taking care of yourself and finding the support you need during this time, please do it because you deserve it, for one. Your needs do matter. You are worthy of feeling grounded, clear, rested, and at ease. And I had to find that support because my daughter was literally at the point where she's like, Mom, I told you that already. Mom, I told you that already. And I'm like, shit, scared about my own memory, right? Because the perimenopausal brain is real and I wasn't sleeping enough. Combine those things, it's horrible. And the body changes, right? That we're not responding to my regular exercise and meditation and clean eating. It's was very depressing. And so I took it upon myself to do exactly what I needed to do to get the specific information that I needed to support myself. And I'm feeling so much better. And if we're not coming from a resourced place with our teenagers or the people in our lives, it is felt and you can't fake a frequency, right? You can try to put on a face, but you cannot fake really a frequency. People will feel it from you. And I'm lucky to have a reference point for feeling like really, really good. And it's for me not kind of worth it to be in this life. Feeling like distraught and depleted and burned out and forgetful and lost and like, who am I? Because that's what perimenopause can do to your brain. And so, ladies, please know that you deserve to feel supported and radiant and healthy and better than you've ever felt in your lives, even during this 45 to 55-year-old time, or for some women, it starts even younger. But
Thank you for saying that because it's so important. I would say it's probably the number one thing that I run up against in supporting women is this feeling of like, well, it's just the way it is now. And not making space for them to know that they absolutely deserve to live out. Like it's a third of our lives that we live in post menopause. However long that may be, that's a significant chunk. And if the world or your healthcare provider is telling you, well, this is just the way it is now, know that that is not the right answer and that you absolutely deserve to feel really good in this part of your life.
Mhm.
You know, like perimenopause, menopause is actually a mirror to puberty. It's the same level of transformation happening in your body. It's just to go instead of going toward fertility, we're moving out of fertility, right? So I try to get people to think about how they felt when they were in puberty, how much their body was shifting and changing, how energy expensive that was. And because we know about puberty more, we give each other more space when we're in that puberty time. We don't give ourselves the same kind of space at this end. And not only are we experiencing this massive transformation, I always describe it as, and we are the ministers of infrastructure for our lives. And so I'm really grateful to you for saying that you deserve it. Make sure you connect with someone who can make you feel well resourced. Because when I facilitate sessions, inevitably, someone or multiple people come up to me at the end and say, Lisa, I thought I was in the early stages of dementia. Lisa, I thought I had this diagnosis or this diagnosis. And it can feel really scary. And there are real ways that we can feel better.
Yeah, exactly. It's possible. That's the other thing. It's possible and it doesn't have to take a lot of work. You just need the right tools. And I'd never heard it framed that way. A third of our lives spent postmenopausal. I mean, that's staggering really to think about. It's very profound. Very profound.
Yeah.
You're right. We don't get the same grace that teenagers got going through puberty, but it's 100% as difficult. May- Maybe more so because we are expected to do so much at this phase of our lives. And that's, I think, what needs to change is we need to work with our own beliefs and programming around what is important, what matters, what our inner compass is. For me, again, it's feeling resourced, inspired, following the beauty, because that's an option. It's not that we
Yes.
don't care about the chaos and tragedy of the world, but for me, as a survival strategy, is beauty, peace, love an option? Great. I'm going to follow that. What it's about. That makes life worth living for me.
Yes, I completely agree. So, just to wrap up our conversation, which has been beautifully full, what are one or two things you would leave listeners with to begin to access their subconscious?
I would say you can look at your life and know where you feel stuck, you're hitting resistance, and where you're struggling. Okay. And then also look at your life and know what do you want. And those are the two ways that I get to help people with their subconscious. But you on your own, look at those two things because a lot of people, like I said earlier, they don't even know what they want. If you don't know what you want, it's going to be really hard to make choices that support that. Really hard. So just ask yourself those questions. And then if you look at where you're stuck, where you're hitting resistance, how would you prefer to be experiencing life? And you can create, like you can listen to self-hypnosis. I haven't found one that I'm in love with. And when I have the time, I am going to make some tracks on top of some binaural beats for the brain, for us auditory people that have some subliminal messaging in there for healing or for trust of yourself or for you to deserve everything that you want that this life has to offer. But you can listen to things, you can smell things, you can visualize things, you can make images, like I said, for your phone, for your laptop. I printed out something from Canva. I just made a vision board and then had it printed out on canvas and it hung in my bedroom for a very long time. You put it where you want to see it. And then I realized one day I was in a session with a client and I looked up and I was like, oh, everything on my vision board has come true. Like it's really time for me to make a new one and keep growing. So those are some ways you can do it. And again, first thing in the morning and before bed, taking some time to be with yourself, just be like, what do I want to feel? What am I grateful for? What do I want? And practice just kind of dropping into like the images of it or the feeling of it is even more helpful. Listen to things, smell things, look at things that help you feel that way. So those are some things. Listen to self-hypnosis. Again, know what you want. You can journal. You can have affirmations on Post-its around your house, but it's like the stuff like Psych K, which is the process I was trained in that does the like deep excavating, heavy lifting that creates the new neural pathway. And then you can use all these other things I just mentioned to reinforce the new pathway that's been created in your brain.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. Krishna's contact information will all be in the show notes. So make sure you check that out. If you feel resonance and like this sounds like and feels like you, make sure you make that connection. Thank you so much for being here today.
I appreciate you, Lisa. Thank you so much.
Thank you for hanging out with me on Transforming 45. If you laughed, nodded, or had an oh wow moment, hit follow and share it with your favorite midlife human. Find me on Instagram at @lboat and keep those transformations coming.
Electric acid.